This one's about my old college roommate, Jess. Jess was always a bit intense, very artistic, very sensitive, very into symbolism and the subconscious. One semester, she got really into dream journaling. She bought this beautiful leather-bound notebook, and every morning, first thing before even getting out of bed, she'd meticulously write down every detail she could remember from her dreams the night before. At first, it was just a quirky hobby, something to talk about over burnt toast in our crappy dorm kitchen. Then things started to get a little weird. Jess began noticing that small, seemingly insignificant details from her dreams would sometimes manifest in reality a day or two later. It started innocuously. She dreamed of a specific, unusual-looking bird with a bright blue crest, something she'd never seen before. 2 days later, while walking across campus, she saw that exact bird perched on a tree. She was ecstatic, convinced it was a sign. I figure it was just Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, Once you notice something new, you start seeing it everywhere. But then the premonitions, as she started calling them, became a little more frequent and a little less benign. She dreamed she'd get a bad grade on a history paper she was worried about. She did. She dreamed her favorite slightly chipped coffee mug would break. The next morning, she accidentally knocked it off her desk, and it shattered. She dreamed she'd have a stupid, pointless argument with her boyfriend, Mike, about what movie to see. That Friday night, they had that exact argument, almost word for word, according to her. Jess became utterly convinced that her dreams were predicting the future, at least the near future, the small, everyday stuff. She started treating her dream journal like a sacred text, poring over it each morning, looking for clues, for warnings. And she started to get really anxious, especially if she had a bad dream. She tried to actively prevent the predictions from coming true. If she dreamed of tripping on a loose paving stone on a certain path, she'd avoid that path for days. If she dreamed of a minor disagreement with a friend, she'd be overly solicitous and agreeable with that friend, trying to preempt the conflict. It was becoming an obsession. The crime here wasn't being committed by an external person, not directly. It was the psychological toll this belief was taking on Jess. Her anxiety levels were through the roof. She was losing sleep, both from the intensity of her dreams and from worrying about what they meant. She started to see omens and signs and everything. I tried to be a supportive friend, but I was also deeply skeptical. Jess, I'd say gently, don't you think a lot of this is just coincidence? Or maybe because you're focusing so much on your dreams, you're subconsciously making some of these things happen? Like, if you dream you're going to argue with Mike, maybe you're a bit more tense around him, and that causes the argument? This is known as self-fulfilling prophecy. She'd just shake her head, her eyes wide and earnest. No, you don't understand, Liam. It's too specific. The dreams come first. They're warnings. The creepiest part was when her dreams started to involve me. She dreamed I'd lose my keys. The next day, I did misplace them for a frantic hour. She dreamed I'd get a sudden nasty cold. 2 days later, I woke up sneezing and coughing. Now, I was starting to feel a bit unnerved, even though my rational mind was screaming coincidence and power of suggestion. I started to wonder if there was something else at play. Was Jess, in her heightened state of anxiety and belief, somehow influencing events? Or a more disturbing thought, was someone else involved? Jess was very open about her dream journal, often reading passages out loud to our circle of friends, discussing her premonitions. Could someone in our group, someone who knew about her obsession, be subtly, cruelly, making some of these predictions come true just to mess with her, or to see how far they could push it? For example, the lost keys. Could a friend have borrowed them for an hour as a sick prank, knowing Jess had dreamed it? The argument with Mike, could Mike, knowing about the dream, have subconsciously steered the conversation that way? It was a horrible thought that her friends might be gaslighting her, even in small ways. But people do strange things. The situation came to a head when Jess had a really vivid, terrifying dream that the old, rickety fire escape outside her dorm window would collapse if anyone stepped on it. She woke up in a panic, absolutely convinced it was a dire warning. She refused to even open the window that day, taped a danger do not use sign to it. She called campus maintenance, babbling about her dream. They came, inspected the fire escape, and pronounced it perfectly sound, if a bit rusty. Jess was inconsolable. She was sure they were wrong, that her dream was right. She became terrified of our room, convinced disaster was imminent. She barely slept for days. What finally broke the cycle was a bit anticlimactic. Jess got a really bad flu and was too sick to dream journal or even remember her dreams for about a week. When she recovered, the intensity of the premonitions seemed to have lessened. Maybe the break in the routine, the fever, had reset something in her mind. She still kept the journal, but with less obsessive fervor. The predictions became less frequent, more ambiguous, more easily explained by coincidence. I never found out if someone was deliberately messing with her, or if it was all just a potent cocktail of anxiety, confirmation bias, and the strange workings of the subconscious mind. But watching Jess go through that period was a chilling lesson in how easily a belief, even in something as ethereal as dream premonitions, can take root and grow into a consuming, terrifying reality for someone. The real horror wasn't in the dreams themselves, but in the power they held over her waking life and the way it isolated her in her own fear, a fear that no one else could truly understand or validate. It makes you wonder about the fine line between intuition and paranoia, and how easily that line can be blurred, especially when you're looking for patterns in the chaos of life. My Aunt Carol, bless her heart, has always been a bit susceptible to what she calls the spiritual arts. After her messy divorce a few years ago, she was feeling pretty lost, vulnerable, looking for answers, for some kind of reassurance about the future. That's when she heard about Madame Evangeline, a fortune teller who operated out of a small, incense-choked shop in a slightly rundown part of town. The local talk, the kind of stories that spread like wildfire in small communities, was that Madame Evangeline was the real deal, that her predictions were uncannily accurate, that she had the true sight. Of course, there were also whispers that she charged a fortune for her gifts, and that some people left her shop more troubled than when they went in. Aunt Carol, in her fragile state, decided she had to see her. She scraped together the hefty consultation fee and went, hoping for some guidance, some light at the end of her tunnel. What she got was a nightmare. I wasn't there, of course, but Aunt Carol recounted the whole session to my mom in a tearful, panicked phone call later that day. And Mom told me. Madame Evangeline, a dramatic woman draped in shawls and heavy silver jewelry, apparently went into some kind of trance. Her voice changing, becoming deeper, more resonant. She told Aunt Carol a few vague, generally positive things about new beginnings and hidden strengths. The usual fortune teller fluff. Then she leaned forward, her eyes wide and staring, and delivered the bombshell. There is a dark shadow over your family, my dear, Madame Evangeline had intoned. Specifically over your son, Michael. Michael is my cousin, Aunt Carol's only child. A sensible, down-to-earth guy. in his early 20s. I see. An accident. A vehicle. Red. A red vehicle. Very soon. Within the month. It will be serious, perhaps final, unless steps are taken. Powerful steps. Aunt Carol, naturally, was horrified. Michael was her world. She pressed Madame Evangeline for details, for what could be done. The seer was vague, but ominous. She spoke of negative energies that needed to be cleansed, of protective talismans that needed to be specially consecrated, of powerful rituals that only she could perform to avert the tragedy, all of which, of course, came with an additional significant price tag. Aunt Carol left that shop a wreck, utterly convinced that Michael was in mortal danger. She immediately called him, hysterical, begging him to stay home, not to drive, to be careful of red cars. Michael, who is as practical as his mother is, was baffled and annoyed. He tried to reassure her, told her it was nonsense. But Aunt Carol was beyond reason. For the next few weeks, our family life was hell. Aunt Carol became obsessed. She called Michael 10 times a day. She tried to follow him to work. She'd stand by her window watching for red cars, her anxiety palpable. She started having panic attacks. She drained a good chunk of her already dwindling savings paying Madame Evangeline for cleansing sessions. And for a ridiculously expensive, blessed amulet that looked like something out of a tourist trap. The crime here was clear, at least to me. Blatant, predatory fraud, preying on a vulnerable person's deepest fears. Madame Evangeline wasn't psychic. She was a ruthless con artist. Her specific prediction about a red car and an accident. Red is one of the most common car colors. Accidents happen every day. Within the month is just vague enough. It was a classic fear-mongering tactic designed to hook the victim emotionally and financially. The psychological thriller aspect was watching Aunt Carol unravel, her life consumed by this manufactured terror. The mystery for us was how to get her to see the truth without completely alienating her or making her feel foolish. My mom and I tried everything. We pointed out how common red cars were. We showed her statistics on car accidents. We gently suggested that Madame Evangeline might not have her best interests at heart, but Aunt Carol was in too deep. The fear was too real for her. What if she's right? She'd whisper, her eyes filled with terror. What if I don't do enough and something happens to Michael? I never forgive myself. That's the insidious genius of these scams. They prey on love and fear. The month passed. Michael, despite his mother's constant, frantic warnings, which he mostly ignored, though he did start noticing every single red car on the road with a new sense of irritation, was perfectly fine. No accidents, no near misses involving red vehicles. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? That Aunt Carol would see she'd been had. Nope. When the deadline passed without incident, she went back to Madame Evangeline. And the psychic, with a knowing smile, told her that it was because of Carol's devotion, her prayers, the cleansing rituals, and of course, the powerful amulet that the tragedy had been averted. She had changed fate. And for a small additional fee, Madame Evangeline could do a protective sealing to ensure Michael remained safe in the future. It was infuriating. But by then, Aunt Carol was so invested, so desperate to believe she had some control, that she almost seemed relieved to have a reason for the non-event. It took a long time and a lot of gentle, patient support from family for Aunt Carol to finally start to see Madame Evangeline for what she was, a skilled manipulator, not a seer. The financial damage was done, but worse was the emotional toll, the weeks of terror she had endured. When I hear people talk about gifted psychics, or fortune tellers who are always right. I think of Aunt Carol and Madame Evangeline. It as a reminder that the most dangerous predictions aren't the ones that come true, but the ones that are designed to exploit your deepest fears and vulnerabilities. The real horror isn't some unseen mystical force, but the very real, very human capacity for calculated cruelty and deception, especially when targeting someone at their lowest point. And the scariest part, how easily people, even smart people, can be drawn in when they're desperate for answers. And how hard it is to convince them they're being played, because sometimes believing the lie is less painful than facing the truth of their own vulnerability. You know how it is at those summer street fairs, right? The smell of fried dough and cotton candy, a million cheesy games, and always tucked away in some corner, a few tents offering psychic readings, palmistry, aura photography, that kind of stuff. I'm a total skeptic, always have been. But my friends Liam and Chloe, they're a bit more open-minded, shall we say. Or maybe just more easily entertained. So, we're at the Midsummer Merriment Fair last year, and Chloe spots this tent. It's all draped in purple velvet, a hand-painted sign proclaiming Madame Zola, seer of auras, reader of destinies. Madame Zola herself is sitting just inside, a woman of indeterminate age, dripping in jangly jewelry, with kohl-rimmed eyes that seem to look right through you. Liam, mostly as a joke, dares me to go in, says he'll pay the $20 for an aura reading. I laugh it off, but then Chloe chimes in. Oh, come on, Mark. It'll be fun. What have you got to lose? Peer pressure, man. It gets you every time. So, I duck into the dim, incense-filled tent. Madame Zola gestures for me to sit on a low stool opposite her. The air is thick, heavy. She doesn't say anything for a long moment, just stares at me with those intense eyes, occasionally humming to herself. It's designed to be theatrical, unnerving, and I'll admit, it's working a little. Your aura, she finally says, her voice a low, gravelly whisper. It is troubled, but strong. Very strong. Standard opening, right? Vague enough to apply to anyone. Then she starts getting a bit more specific. I see. A recent disappointment. Something you hoped for, it did not come to pass. Well, yeah, I'd just been passed over for a promotion at work I really wanted. But I'd been complaining about it to Liam and Chloe all week. Could she have overheard us earlier at the fair? Or was it just a good guess? Lots of people have recent disappointments. And there is a journey. A journey you are hesitant to take, but one that holds significance. Again, plausible. I was debating whether to go on a hiking trip with some of her friends, a trip I wasn't entirely sure I was up for, but again, pretty common life stuff. She continues like this for a bit, throwing out these general statements that have just enough of a hook to make me think, how'd she know that? She mentions a creative project left unfinished, a connection to someone with the initial S. It's all classic cold reading. I know it is. She's observing my reactions, my body language, picking up on tiny cues, leading me, but damn, she's good at it. She's weaving a narrative that feels almost real. Then her demeanor changes. Her eyes narrow, her voice drops even lower. But there is something else, Mark. Something darker in your aura. A shadow. My name. She's my name. Liam or Chloe must have mentioned it when they paid. Still, it's effective. A shadow? I ask, trying to sound nonchalant, but my heart rate picks up a bit. Yes, she says, leaning closer, the scent of patchouli and something else. Something metallic, almost like old pennies, wafting from her. There's someone close to you. Someone you trust. A friend, perhaps, or a colleague. They smile to your face, but behind your back, there is jealousy, deceit. They do not wish you well. They are working against you, subtly. Be wary, Mark. This shadow, it could cause you great harm if you're not careful. A betrayal is coming. Now, that got my attention. It was specific, it was ominous, and it was designed to plant a seed of doubt, of paranoia. I tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on, Madame Zola. My friends are great. My colleagues are, well, colleagues, but no one's out to get me. She just shakes her head slowly, her eyes still fixed on me. The aura does not lie, Mark. The shadow is there. Watch your back. Trust no one completely. I left the tent feeling weird, unsettled. Logically, I knew it was bull. She was a performer, a con artist, preying on people's insecurities. But that warning, a betrayal is coming from someone close. It stuck with me. It burrowed into my brain like a tick. For the next few weeks, I couldn't help it. I started looking at my friends, my coworkers, differently. Liam, who always been a bit competitive, was just joking about the promotion I didn't get actually tinged with satisfaction. Chloe, who'd been a little distant lately, was she hiding something? My boss, who deep picked someone else for the promotion? Was there more to it than just he was more qualified? It was insane. I was letting this $20 street fare psychic mess with my head, poison my relationships. The crime here wasn't a physical one, it was psychological. She had expertly planted a seed of paranoia, and my own mind was watering it, making it grow. It was a subtle form of manipulation, designed to make her prediction a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I started acting suspicious and withdrawn around my friends, of course relationships would suffer, proving her right. I even started replaying her other hits in my mind. The disappointment. She probably just saw I wasn't a teenager, so a work or relationship disappointment was a safe bet. The journey, who isn't contemplating some kind of trip or change. The creative project. So many people have one. The initial SS is one of the most common initials. It was all just clever guesswork and vague pronouncements, made to sound profound by the atmosphere and her delivery. It took a conscious effort to shake it off, to remind myself that Madame Zola was just a very skilled observer and manipulator, not a seer. The shadow she saw was probably just the $20 leaving my wallet. No betrayal ever came, at least not in the dramatic way she implied. My friends were still my friends. My colleagues were still just colleagues, but the experience left a bad taste. It showed me how easily people, even skeptics like me, can be influenced by a well-crafted, fear-mongering prediction, especially when it touches on our deepest insecurities about trust and loyalty. That street fair aura reader might not have stolen my wallet, but she tried to steal my peace of mind, my trust in the people around me. And that, in its own way, is a pretty nasty little bit of everyday evil. It makes you wonder how many people walk away from those tents with a seed of doubt planted, a shadow cast over their lives by a few carefully chosen manipulative words. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest psychics are just very good at reading people, not auras.